7:15, Tommy Tucker, and we are pleased to announce, or at least we're joined by Steve Scalise, the U.S. Congressman from Mandeville and a majority whip of the House of Representatives. Good morning.
Hey, good morning, Tommy. How are you?
I'm all right. Tell me about the way the CBO scored the American Health Care Act, and honestly, does it really matter considering it hasn't been to the Senate yet, or will it help in the Senate using that information to maybe change the bill as they see fit?
Well, the CBO's always had a flawed methodology. If you look at the original report, and it's really not much different on this one. I mean, it shows that we reduced premiums even more with the changes we made to the bill. It actually reduces the uninsured even more with the changes. But from the beginning, their approach was flawed because they said in the first year, 10 million people lose coverage. And, Tommy, we have a transition in the first year, so nobody loses anything. What people do in our bill, we give them the freedom to go and pick any kind of health care plan they want. They don't have to be in Obamacare. We get rid of the penalties for the individual mandate and the employer mandate, meaning you now have the freedom to buy whatever kind of health care plan you want. You don't have to buy what the government tells you. They call that lost coverage. I call it freedom. If you don't have to buy something, and the government used to be telling you you had to buy it, you didn't lose the thing that you didn't want. You just have the freedom now. So they just look at the world differently than we do. And, most people that are in Obamacare realize that they're paying a lot more. In Louisiana last year, we paid double-digit increases. Next year, we're projected to pay over 20% more, again, for health care. Plus, the deductibles are drastically higher. You look at a lot of states right now, Tommy, it's happened 2-3 weeks ago in Iowa. It's happened in Virginia. We just got word a couple of days ago in Kansas. Nobody is writing insurance. Blue Cross in Kansas literally just said earlier this week they're not going to offer policies for anybody in Obamacare because it doesn't work. So if you have a pre-existing condition in many states around the country, a growing number, you're not going to have any place to go buy insurance. So you're going to have to go to the emergency room. The law doesn't work. Our bill actually lowers premiums, gives people the real freedom to go buy whatever they want, reforms the Medicaid program, which is a very broken form of health care. It does a lot of good things for families and low-income people to actually give you the ability to buy whatever you want at a lower cost in health care.
But if the federal government is cutting Medicaid, and if that's the case, where are we in Louisiana going to get that money? Because you know what's going on in Baton Rouge right now. They're trying to squeeze the nickel at both ends until the buffalo, and that's an old joke. But how are they going to find that money, Steve, to make up for that?
Right. And Tommy, this is one of those old adages of the way that they do accounting in Washington or Baton Rouge or anywhere. If currently you're getting, let's say you're getting $100 billion, and next year you're going to get $100 billion, they call that a cut because they wanted to get $110 billion. Nobody's getting a cut. We just actually slow the growth and control the growth because what states have told us for years is Medicaid is, in a lot of cases, you're spending money on things you don't need to do and don't want to do because the government in Washington tells you what you have to do and how to run the program in Louisiana. If Louisiana can run its program on its own, it can do it for a lot better. But nobody gets less money. They just don't get the increases that they were used to getting, which, by the way, are not sustainable, Tommy. Our country's going broke. We don't have a balanced budget. We're trying to get to a balanced budget. And if everybody just keeps printing money and borrowing it from China, your kids and my kids aren't going to have the American dream that we have today.
But if
we control the growth. Nobody gets cut, but you just don't get as much additional money as you might have.
Hello?
That's not a cut.
Okay, the phone's cutting in and out. But if the state's getting $100 million or billion, what'd you say? Million, got to be, yeah.
Well, I mean, just pick
wait.
a number. You're not going to get less money. You're going to either get the same amount of money or more, but just not as much more as you wanted.
But why would that not come with the same federal restrictions as it did before?
Because we block grant Medicaid to the states, which means each state gets to run the Medicaid program as they see fit. You can't use your Medicaid money to go and build roads, but you can use your Medicaid money in health care for low-income people. But if you can come up with more innovative ideas, which many states do, and usually the federal government tells them they can't do that because it doesn't fit the rigid one-size-fits-all model of Washington's Medicaid program. We changed that. We actually let states run their own Medicaid program because, look, low-income people in Louisiana have a lot different kind of needs than low-income people in California. And yet right now you really have to run it very similarly. And if Louisiana has an innovative idea and they say, hey, Medicaid, which is CMS, is the program that runs Medicaid in D.C. They have to ask CMS for a waiver, and usually they get denied that waiver, meaning you can't do something innovative. We change it and let states be innovative with the existing money they have, not with less money, with the existing money they have.
So the people, the CBO said 24 million, I think, would lose coverage. What you said then that they wouldn't, so there would be policies available. Insurance companies would write it. And since they're elderly, and no offense, that's a lot of people that are elderly incur higher medical bills than those that aren't, will they be able to afford the premiums?
They would. And again, by lost coverage, what CBO is meaning is if you don't stay on Obamacare, in many cases by your own choice. If you don't want to be on Obamacare, you in our bill have the freedom to get off of it. And that's not lost coverage. It's freedom. But we also have a tax credit for families that are low income, because right now if you get your health care, let's say from your company, over 60% of Americans get their health care from their employer. Over 20% of Americans get their health care from Medicare. Neither of those programs are changed at all in our bill. But for the people that buy health insurance on their own, right now if they're doing it through Obamacare, we get rid of that and give you a tax credit. So now you can go buy any kind of policy you want from anybody who offers it, whatever's best for your family. And there are a lot of companies who today do not offer Obamacare policies because it doesn't work. You might only have Blue Cross in Louisiana to buy your health care from. Now there's going to be multiple companies that will finally come back in and offer plans for families based on what the family wants, not based on what Washington tells you have to have.
I presume you're talking to Bill Cassidy about this, maybe Susan Collins. How likely is the Senate version to look anything like this at all?
I think in the end it'll look a lot alike because, look, we've got moderates in our conference. We've got ultra-conservatives, conservatives. I'm a conservative. I worked with every faction within our conference to put together, and it was not easy because you've got to thread a needle of, what is not only the best policy for each individual member that they like for their constituents back home, but what gets a majority vote. When every Democrat voted no because they want to keep Obamacare, we can only work with Republicans who recognize Obamacare doesn't work for families. So, they're going to realize, how do you lower premiums? How do you protect people with pre-existing conditions? How do you give people the freedom to buy whatever they want? Those were our guiding principles, and that's ultimately how we came to a majority. It took a few months. It took a lot of time. It took a lot of individual meetings, talking to members, talking to people back home, all of us. I shared a lot of stories I got from my constituents. People with pre-existing conditions, for example, who under Obamacare are paying dramatically more, and their plan doesn't even work for them. So all of that's going to have to happen again in the Senate because they're going to deal with the same complicated issues we do. I hope they pass a bill because we cannot keep going on this unsustainable path of Obamacare.
I know you're busy. On May 11th, you went on the 9th Annual Offshore Energy Tour. Part of the president's budget includes doing away with these GOMESA funds that the entire Louisiana delegation worked on to get our share of off-coast revenues, and now he wants to do away with that. How likely is that to happen?
It's completely unlikely. It will not happen. I was actually with Mick Mulvaney yesterday, the president's director of Office of Management and Budget, who puts the budget together, and I just made it real clear to him, I'm not going to let a dime of our GOMESA money be taken. And he recognizes that. He knows it's not going to pass the House, which means, look, we fought for this hard because this is the money that allows us to restore our coast, Tommy. It's too critical for Louisiana. Louisiana for decades never got a dime from the offshore revenue that was generated by all the drilling that's done off our coast. This finally gets us the ability to share in the revenues like every other state, and we produce a lot of energy for the country. And so we ought to get our fair share like everybody else does of that money. It's going to mean hundreds of millions of dollars a year, and it's dedicated in Louisiana to coastal restoration. That money will be protected in the House. I surely will not let them take that money. And the president knows that. It's not going to be a fight we have with the president. He recognizes it won't pass the House. So we're going to keep that money to continue restoring our coast.
Well, that's good news. Thank you. I know you're busy. The U.S. Congressman Steve Scalise, the majority whip of the U.S. House of Representatives. We appreciate your time and come back, all right?
Always great being with you, Tommy. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.